going live. Meeting is now streaming live on Facebook. Yay. So we're doing this on my Facebook because for whatever reason, I am unable to connect to allyship, but I'm going to see if I can do this. Now I'm acting like allyship, apparently. So let's see how it goes. Thank you for being here. This is LGBTQ Allyship's Industry Happy Hour, where we talk about worker rights and why it's important for LGBTQ community to know about the worker rights and what worker rights we want to talk about. So one of the most important ones that I always feel needs to be talked about is our the paid sick and safe time. And I really hope that people know that they know their rights around this, because paid sick and safe time is one of those things where if you are sick, especially during COVID, you should be able to tap into your paid sick and safe time and utilize it. It starts accumulating the moment you get start your first shift. So if you work for a company that is 250 or 249 employees or less, and you work a 40-hour week, and this is not for salary people, but 40 hours a week, you for every hour you work, you for every 40 hours, 40 hours that you work, you get 1 hour of paid sick and safe time. And if you have 250 or more employees that you work with, so a larger company like, I don't know, Amazon, you would be able to accrue 1 hour of safe and sick time for every 30 hours you work. That's an important distinction. Not everybody knows that. So if you're working 30 hours, you get 1 hour of sick and safe time. Reasons to take your sick and safe time: emergency reasons, here we are, an emergency pandemic. If you feel ill and you feel unsure of what you have, or you don't want to pass it to anybody else, take a sick time. Use it. If you are needing to quarantine, take a sick time. Quarantine. If you are experiencing domestic violence, that's what safe time is. If you, your housemate, a family member is experiencing domestic violence and you need to support them, you get to take your safe time. Or if for some reason you have a family member that is young, like my 12-year-old, and school is closed and there's nobody else to take care of your child except for you, then you may need to take sick time. You also get to take a safe and sick time if you, and this is paid safe and sick time, if you have your own sickness or a child you need taken to the doctor or a dentist appointment. All those are legit. So that's an important thing. Why is this important to LGBTQ community? Well, because we know that lots of times we're not granted information, and you want to be sure that you're being granted that information, that your safe and sick time is available, and it's available if you have family members within your household that need support. And that is a distinction where a lot of people think that because we are queer that we don't need to have, if you don't have a kid or whatever, it's like, I still need the time. So make sure you're advocating for your time. Do anybody have questions right now? Is there anything out there around safe and sick time?
I just ran off screen briefly to go get my, since I work with Instacart, I get a monthly statement of paid safe and sick time, and I was curious. I have 2 days accrued based on 70 days worked since October 1st, 2019. I moved back to Seattle in October of 2020, so it's really more taking that into consideration. But yeah, it's interesting. I'm curious about those numbers as they relate to independent contractors, and if there's a different ratio for independent contractors as opposed to the other categories that you mentioned.
Yeah, so I'm glad that you brought that up. Actually, the gig workers do have safe and sick time during the moratorium. You knew that, right?
Right.
We have talked about that. Chris and I have spoken before. And I just want to point out for those that are doing gig work, you're in June 26th, they passed a ordinance for safe and sick time for gig workers due to the virus pandemic, and it applies only to food and grocery delivers, such as DoorDash, Postmates, Uber Eats, and Grubhub, and anybody else that's delivering food. The additional amount is on top of what the current pay is. It's an additional pay. I'm sorry, that's hazard pay. I'm looking at hazard pay, but it is still the same thing. July 13th. You will receive 180 days after the end of the city's moratorium safe state emergency. It'll still be in effect for 180 days after. So it hasn't ended yet. We can't predict when they're going to call it an end. It applies to transportation of food, like I said, but for every 30 days you work at any job that touches the city of Seattle, it accrues 1 day of sick leave. So you do have to touch the city of Seattle, which means touching, and gig workers probably know this more than I do, but touching means that you're delivering or picking up within Seattle.
Yeah, I usually see on my statement a difference. You see the Seattle pay specifically that goes away if I grab an order in Renton or somewhere else. And
That's
you definitely
good.
see that in the statement.
That's good to hear. You can use your sick and safe, your sick leave if you are working in Seattle once in the past 90 days. So if you'd been working before the moratorium, before the COVID-19, you would be receiving 90 days worth. And you should have already received sick leave accrued from the law that was put in effect. Again, the reasons are the same. You're sick, family member sick, you need to go to an appointment, you need to get your COVID shot. Those are all reasonable reasons to take a sick leave day. Children aren't in school and you need to take care of someone, or you think that you've been put at risk of contracting COVID, or deactivated from an app as a result of COVID. That's another reason to take it. And so does that talk about, you said independent contractors though, Chris. And so
yeah, I'm an independent contractor with Instacart. So that's, even though that's the only, I mean, I have a DoorDash account active as well for shopping, but that's sort of my backup. So I'm an independent contractor for both.
Yeah, and unfortunately, sick pay, except for gig workers. As an independent contractor, you don't receive that, except
Yeah, so
for
I
gig
think
workers.
this is the type of pay that it, that 2 days is gonna go away, unless things change, which they could. But
Yes.
that's gonna go away.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that things do change and that we're advocating for gig workers to um, be able to, and this is something that allyship is doing, and we'd love to invite any gig workers, LGBTQ gig workers, to have a voice. We would love to talk to you about the advocacy work that is being done around gig work, about increasing pay so it's minimum wage at the least, along with covering for getting minimum wage before or after all your expenses, right? So that your expenses are covered and you're still making a minimum, at least the minimum wage in our city and state, um, along with benefits being out of pocket, along with sick and safe time. You should be allowed to have sick and safe time as a gig worker. You're already paying tons, so to just have your job. Speaking of gig workers, we do want to cover a little bit about hazard pay then. And this is, again, through the moratorium, during the moratorium, once the state of emergency ends, this one will end also. But this is where you receive $2.50 for a pickup within Seattle. And then you can, additionally to what you're already being paid, and then a stack delivery, you can receive another $1.25 of hazard pay for every additional delivery point, and then another stack pickup receive additional $1.25 of hazard pay for every pickup per one customer. And so that could be up to $5 additional. From my understanding, and Chris, since you're a gig worker, you know this, it does show up in your paycheck. It's supposed to show up as a separate line that's what's happening. And this is going through, again, the Seattle city limits. It's not outside the Seattle city limits. So you should be seeing that additional line that you're receiving that extra pay. And yes, gig workers are receiving that. And if they're not seeing it and they know that they went in, they should make sure that they are talking with or texting with their employer.
Yep. So the order I did today, I see a line item of Seattle grocery delivery pay $5, and it was a batch of 3 orders, so that makes sense.
Awesome. And I'm glad that they're showing it on a separate line. And I'm hoping that that's happening across the board with all of the different DoorDash, Postmates, Uber Eats, all of them should be showing that, so that you know where you're getting your money from, why you're getting your money. Because if you're not getting that, it could be considered wage theft, which leads us into another amazing law that covers us, right? I love this one. So if you're not being paid for that, or say you're being asked to work when you're off hours, taking a lunch, and it's interrupted, or you're asked to not take your break, so because it's so busy, that is wage theft. Those are signs of wage theft. If you are collaping, that's a new word I learned. That's closing and opening. And I don't always say it properly, I think. But anyways.
I think it's clopening.
Clopening, thank you. I don't know why I say collaping. It sounds better, I think. Anyways, cloping. That is closing and opening with less than 6 hours between the time frame. And you should be getting paid. First of all, you should be asked if you even want to do that. And if you don't, you're allowed to deny it, and you should not be reprimanded for denying it. There's lots of reasons why I know why I wouldn't do it. Everybody has a reason why they would or why they wouldn't. Would be you get paid extra. You should be getting paid extra for that. And if you're not being paid extra, that's wage theft. And that's a possible lawsuit. So if you do find that as a possibility, that's happened in the past and it's not that long ago, and you have records showing that, you can always check with OLS, and that's labor standards. Yeah, Office of Labor Standards, and or your LNI. You can do a Washington State LNI claim. They have great little information where you can report that issue. So copy. I'm going to put that in our chat box for everyone so everyone can see it. Everyone, there we go. This one's labor standards, Office of Labor Standards. You can go there and apply if you feel that if you have received or you have wage theft. Do we have any questions?
Because I was going to comment that after our conversation about wage theft the other day, I was at my seasonal office, and a coworker made the comment of like, oh yeah, I'll do a couple of little things off the clock just to like make things easier on my day or whatever. And sort of, he was the type who was fully confident, and sort of like, I could tell he knew he knew the implications of what he was doing. And at the same time, little buzzers went off in my head of like, but that is, you're giving away your wages. Like, you don't have to do that. And at that office, when we log into the internal software, we get a pop-up that says, we require that you be paid for the work that you do. So it's not as if we're not being told. And still there's, it's cultural. There's just like, it's a hard shift to make because it's so cultural. Like, the way you really truly advance in the world is by volunteering your time in some way. Like, in so many contexts that is true.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate too, because that's a great way for employers to feel that they can still do that and still ask that and get away with that. So it's a person that they may even go to and say, hey, we have this little extra thing we need to get done. Are you available? And almost knowingly that person's going to say, yeah, sure. But the laws are set in place so that they could get paid for doing that. And if the employer really needs somebody to do that, they should be paying them. And like you said, they're recognizing, they're covering themselves and recognizing, yeah, you should be being paid, and yet allowing this person not to be paid. So that's also still on the employer. By allowing somebody to do that, it is considered wage theft, and it's on the employer to say to that person, we're going to pay you.
Well, and as we're talking about it, it's making me think about the fact that like there's also the futures of it all, like because the person who volunteers their time is often the person who's advanced, because that's a part of the culture of it, is like, oh, they'll always put in the extra mile and stay a little longer and all of that, and so we'll push them ahead. But then that's already somebody who's doing more than they're being paid for, so the company's benefiting from pushing them forward, and the people who do work hard and demand and require being paid for that stay left behind. So I'm realizing even further complexities of like, your career can really be disrupted just by asking for pay for work.
Right. Legitimate pay for work.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's really helpful for thinking about beyond too. Is there so there's other laws? Is there anything that you would like to know? Either one of you? I know Katrina, you know some, but is there something that anybody wants to expand on? No.
I'm going to be honest, I'm more familiar with the renters' rights than the workers' rights. So
Of course.
I don't want to say the wrong facts.
I wasn't asking you to say a fact. I was asking you if you had a question. Yeah, so one of the other areas that talking about worker rights that we could talk about is secured, my brain is left me, secured scheduling. That's the word I'm looking for. Secured scheduling. So this is not in the realms of gig workers. This is the realm of retail and service workers. So secured scheduling is knowing your schedule ahead of time, being told your schedule within a reasonable amount of time, being able to also dictate some of your schedule for such as, not dictate, but have predictable schedule so that you know when your shift starts, when it's canceling, when you're done with your shift, having predictability. And that's 14 days in advance of having your schedule. This is for the larger service industry, retail and food, and that's 501 total employees. And then the other thing about it is if your employer puts you on a call list, like calls and says, hey, we need you to work for a shift, they don't cancel it because they realize that, hey, we actually didn't end up needing you without a reasonable time. And then if you receive extra pay for working shifts, or that you are, again, the closing and opening together, you get extra pay. And I'm sorry, I misspoke, for less than 10 hours. It's not 6 hours, less than 10 hours. So I misspoke that. So I hope that's not confusing for people. Again, that's that lovely word that I like to say, colloping and colloping. Anyways, it is a shift opening and closing less than 10 hours apart. You need a significant amount of sleep. And the other thing to know about it is you can reject working a shift that's being offered, or say that the employer calls you to work a shift or cancels the shift on a posted schedule. You should be informed far enough in advance. I think I said that already. And then also, you should be offered additional hours if you want them before an employer hires a part-time employee, a new part-time employee. So say they're only going to hire a part-time employee and you're working less than 40 hours a week. They should be offering you that before they hire a part-time person. And say all your coworkers are working less than 40 hours. You all should get the opportunity to fill those shifts before they hire a part-time person. Any questions about that?
I'm hearing a lot of things that don't go right in my seasonal retail position for sure.
Mm.
And that's been I've actually done that role in 2 states, and in both cases, scheduling, and I've worked in the restaurant industry a bunch, and never has there been, and I've never understood really any excuse that any manager has had about not having a schedule ready at least a week in advance of the time that's being scheduled. And that really feels like rushing it. But there, I know of places current, I've had friends who've talked to me of places that the day of, they don't know if they're working or not. And I certainly, like, there are places that I've worked, that's over in Spokane, but I've worked, there are times where the job that I work seasonally, like, I have to sort of check in on our shared office calendar to see when I might have appointments or might be working. And it's not like that's where the schedule is. It's just like, or I mean, that is where the schedule is, but it's like, it's not a practice of communication. That's just our calendar. It's not as
Wow.
if that's like, okay, go to this and find out your schedule on X day, and we'll definitely let you know if anything changes. It changes dramatically based on business, and with not even an automated, like, it's the type of calendar that automatically sends reminders to our clients, but when things on our schedule changes, nothing gets sent. So
And this is
it's,
retail?
yeah.
Is that within Seattle?
Yes. Yeah, it's a national tax preparation situation.
Okay. Because this is a Seattle law. I want to emphasize that.
Sure.
But it is for retail and restaurants of 501 over total employees. And what I'm hearing is that you don't even, it doesn't even sound like you're getting a schedule.
It's, yeah, there's a schedule posted, but it's not, it's one of those, like,
It could change any minute.
right, it could change any minute, and B, it's not, like I said, it's not as if, like, hey, schedule's up. It's like once or twice throughout the season I might hear that something shifted, but otherwise I need to be on top, like, every shift. I've even messaged my manager, and had it not be understood what I was saying, I messaged her to say, can you, if you make, like, I need this shift in my schedule, can you let me know before Wednesday if you make changes for my schedule before Wednesday? Because I won't know otherwise. And what I was just saying is, can you let me know if you change my schedule before I'm in the office to look at my schedule? And it didn't even seem that the request was understood, which I found very, like, when we're talking about, like, this is a basic, you should be able to know what your schedule is in advance. It's like, you don't even understand that that's what I'm asking for.
Right. So secure scheduling is part of the knowledge of knowing what you're going to be doing from day in to day out,
Yeah.
so that you can plan your personal life too. So I'm sorry about that. And, we can always talk and follow up about that too.
Yeah. Sounds like it.
And it sounds like it's because it's seasonal. I'm wondering if there is a difference around that. But I definitely don't believe so. So
I also wouldn't know how they're partitioned business-wise in terms of whether this partition might be under 500 people. It's not we're not a franchise, but still.
Right. And that's why it's important to remember for larger franchise type places like Nordstrom. They are all over in other states. That counts as part of that. It's not just
Oh, okay.
in the Seattle area. So, and it's the same thing with the gig workers. We're talking about, when we talk about these sizes, we're talking about across the board. We're not talking about just in Seattle. Starbucks, and we know that they're a large company, Amazon, and those ones are in the Seattle area, but Nordstrom and Macy's, or trying to think of a restaurant that is big enough that I can't, it's not coming to my head right now. The only one coming to my head is Sizzler, which I don't even know if they exist anymore. But IHOP, there's one. So equivalent to Sizzler just for breakfast. All right, so we've covered some important laws today. We've got, I'm going to rename them, the wage theft. We've got the paid safe and sick time, wage theft, and gig sick time, gig hazard pay, and secured scheduling. What I do want to say is something that's really exciting that allyship has worked towards, and with many other as coalitions, we have passed the state law around paid sick and safe time in naming family, expanding the word family to recognize LGBTQ families, adopted families, chosen family. So when we're talking about family members within our household, we are talking about family members that are important to us. So when we need to take time off because a family member is ill, and in my case, it would be my partner's son. He is not my son. I call him my son. He doesn't like it, but I call him boy. And if anything were to happen to him, I would take the day off. If he had a doctor's appointment or a dental appointment that his mother or father could not cover, I am the other parent. So I would be able to take paid sick and safe time to be able to take him to his appointment. This is an important law for our community because we know that LGBTQ families are bigger than our immediate family. We have chosen family, and this law covers us. So it's a big win, and it's statewide. So it's not just Seattle. Additionally, if you are excited about this kind of work and want to work for advocating towards trans, queer, LGBTQ rights, economic justice, feel free to connect with me. I'm Taylor at Allyship, and I would love for you to be on our worker rights, the LGBTQ Worker Rights Committee. I am grateful for Chris being here, who is on our committee. Katrina is one of our amazing staff people too. And so you can always reach out to us and ask us questions, or if you want to be on the committee or you want to volunteer for allyship, please let me know. I feel like that's about all we have today, unless anybody has more questions.
Or if you had anything else you wanted to share, Chris.
You're just curious about that thing I said in the chat. I was going to comment that before I get to that, because it's fun and actually might be an interesting case for you, but I was going to say that I see that, a part of that redefinition of family that I think is a benefit that wouldn't apply to my upbringing or identity, but I think a lot of communities of color might really benefit from is, you know, you still have the auntie, the uncle, you know, grandma that raised the whole family and cousins, because because people are working. Like, so I can see how intersectionally that's really going to help. That could potentially, if people see it that way and choose to like empower themselves with that redefinition, I could see that really helping, you know, communities beyond our own, or those communities that we intersect with.
Yes. And yeah,
Right.
in the same token of having a foster child, having, you know, adopted child, or a grandmother raising their child, their grandchild, you know, it's amazing way of talking about extended family.
Yeah, I love it. The example that Katrina wants to hear about is that an intersection between renters' rights and workers' rights is that back in 2008, I was very briefly an apartment manager for I will say, a very fastidious gay couple. I don't have very fond feelings about them, but they were the owners. My partner and I worked for an apartment management company, and this couple was notorious for nitpicking to the nth degree their apartment managers and just treating them terribly. And because it's a relationship with a management company, they're the like bosses, not bosses. Um, and at least at the time, you all will know better than I do, but at the time, the apartment that we were given in order to run the building was a part of our employment benefits, and did not fall under any sort of renter's rights. Therefore, part of their notorious nitpicking is when they got to the point that they disliked their apartment managers strong enough, their apartment managers were given 3 days to vacate the premises. And that's what my partner and I were given eventually. And after horrible treatment, we were given 3 days to leave, and we made it happen. But it was an interesting, like, we asked a friend who was in law school at the time, because that's all we could think of, because we were packing.
Right.
And you know, now with further experience, I would have reached out to an organization like this or something similar. But yeah, that's the thing that happens, that has always been a very interesting, like, I get the legal way that probably did work out, that they got away with it, but they almost did it with glee, and that was an added little kick.
Wow, that's really unfortunate, and I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at this point, at least, there's like, I don't remember if you said you were in Seattle when that was happening, or if you were somewhere else.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, at least at this point, there are more protections in place, maybe, hopefully, with like
do
just
you
cause
think that's a
eviction and
loophole
stuff.
that still might exist?
Say that
Oh
again?
no.
I'm just curious if that's a loophole that could still exist, because the loophole was simply that it's an employment benefit. And, you know, if rental laws have advanced, but that hasn't gotten looped into the rental laws in some way, then I could see it still being, you know, I think that we're one of a very large number of cases that has actually had somebody find this loophole and use it against them. But I also might be assuming a lot about people.
Yeah, I can't say if it is or not, but I would hope that it's not, because we're talking about you're talking about home insecurity, like home's
Yeah.
insecurity, that at a drop of the hat you could lose your housing. So, and 3-day notice evictions are for catastrophic type situations, such as damage to the building, or nuisances, or overabundance of garbage or whatever on the outside. You're managing a building. Those are probably not the things that you're doing. So giving a 3-day notice, I would not believe would be correct, even if it was considered a job benefit.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something that I feel that we're going to look into now, because what an interesting part of combining work and rent, your home and your work together in a sense of workers' rights and housing rights, renters' rights.
Mm-hmm.
So there's got to be something in the lease agreement that states, because you still have to have a lease agreement with them around your job. So it's something I'm going to
how that
definitely
works
look
if
into.
we did or not. Again, this is 12 years ago too, so
Right.
you know, much has shifted in
Yes.
this realm since then.
And
yeah, I knew you both would be intrigued by that.
Well, thank you, and hopefully people that end up watching this are also intrigued, and think about that, and think about, you know, your renters' rights too, which is another area that allyship works on. That being said, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate going on Facebook Live. Thank you all.
New experience for us all. Yeah, thanks so much, Chris.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you, Taylor.
Yes. Everybody have a good night and enjoy some sun.
Yeah,
And
me too.
you. Bye.
Bye.